Rich HOA-KAREN splashes mud on domestic rural girl, unaware who was watching. Before we dive into this breathtaking story of overcoming obstacles, leave a comment below telling us which city and country you're watching us from. Stay tuned until the end. The new employee. Ana Lucia entered in Willow Creek Estates with her maid's badge hanging around her neck and a simple backpack on her back. Her luxurious entrance contrasted with the simplicity of her presence, which drew some suspicious glances. She had been hired to work in the house of Mrs. Rosenberg, a widow known for her rigidity and perfectionism. Despite this, Ana was there of her own free will, at the request of her father, who wanted her to learn to live away from the privileges of the family fortune. As soon as she walked through the gates of the condominium, she noticed the cold and meticulously controlled environment. Symmetrical gardens, rules on signs, and residents with hard faces indicated that here, appearance was everything. Her boss received her indifferently, quickly showing her the housework. Ana, with a polite posture and attentive gaze, assimilated everything naturally without mentioning her origins or her real surname. Gossip circulated frequently in the condominium halls about the president of the Homeowners Association, Karen Whitmore, a middle-aged woman who controlled everything with an iron fist. She was known for being intolerant of change and ruthless toward anyone who didn't fit the Willow Creek standard. Ana hadn't met her in person yet, but she had heard whispers about her obsession with control and perfection. That night, Ana lay in her small room at the back of Mrs. Rosenberg's house, reflecting on the new world she had entered. It wasn't just a job, it was a personal mission of learning and humility. Little did she know that she was about to become the target of a contempt that would bring out the worst and the best in the people around her. And behind the closed gates of that gated community, justice moved silently. The queen of the condominium, Karen Whitmore, walked steadily down the sidewalk of the condominium, inspecting every bush, every poorly painted door, every out-of-place sound system. She wore expensive clothes, stood up straight, and wore sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. For her, being president of the HOA was not just a position, it was a throne. And in her reign, anyone who deviated from the aesthetics was considered a threat to order. Seeing Ana cleaning Mrs. Rosenberg's porch in her simple clothes and her hair tied back, Karen frowned. She didn't like new faces, especially ones from outside. Her eyes passed over Ana as if she were part of the furniture, but her inner judgment was clear. This girl didn't belong in Willow Creek. Karen believed that social order was maintained by isolating those who were different. That same day, during an informal HOA meeting, Karen commented to other residents about the new rustic-looking maid. The comment drew snickers and judgmental looks. Karen didn't need to say much to manipulate the opinions of others. Her influence was based on intimidation and the fear of displeasing those who held the keys to power there. Ana, without knowing it, had been added to the list of undesirable elements. Ana continued to do her job with dedication and politeness, without imagining that someone so powerful was already looking at her with contempt. She swept, cooked, and kept smiling, even though she felt the weight of malicious looks wherever she went. But what no one knew was that, despite her simple appearance, she carried a weighty name and was there because of a choice that would change destinies. The mud fuse. It was raining heavily that late afternoon, and Ana was walking back from the condominium's communal laundry with 2 bags full of clean clothes. The wet asphalt reflected the evening light, and small puddles formed on the edges of the street. She walked carefully along the sidewalk, trying to avoid the mud that had accumulated near the gutters. She was wearing her worn raincoat, her hair tied up, and wet flip-flops. Just then, a white luxury SUV approached. Karen was behind the wheel, accelerating deliberately when she saw Ana ahead. Without hesitation, she drove through a huge puddle of mud, splashing dirty water all over the side where Ana was walking. The impact was immediate. Her clean clothes were soaked, and Ana was covered in mud from the neck down. The car didn't even slow down, and the only thing that could be heard was a muffled laugh coming from inside the vehicle. Ana stood still for a few seconds, trying to hold back her tears. It wasn't just the dirt, it was the public humiliation. Workers from other houses and even an elderly neighbor had witnessed the scene. Some moved away, pretending not to have seen it. Others just looked down. She took a deep breath, picked up the dirty bags, and walked to Mrs. Rosenberg's house without saying a word. Her dignity, even stained with mud, remained intact. On the porch of a house at the end of the street, a man watched everything with a serious expression. Elijah Grant, Ana Lucia's father, was there in disguise, exactly as he had planned weeks before. What he had just seen awakened something that had been dormant inside him, the instinct for justice. From that moment on, the mission of silent observation gave way to a much more audacious strategy. The man on the balcony, Elijah Grant, was a reclusive businessman who owned several ranches and businesses in Texas and had built up a considerable fortune over the decades. He never liked the spotlight and raised Ana with simple values, even though he could have given her everything. When she expressed a desire to understand the world outside the billionaire circle, he decided to help her in an unusual way. He sent his daughter to the condominium as a maid and moved in secretly at a friend's house as a temporary gardener. Ever since Ana had arrived, Elijah had watched her from afar, testing her resilience and ability to adapt. Seeing her being covered in mud by an arrogant woman stirred more than concern in him. It stirred indignation. He knew that this woman, Karen, was the kind of person who used power to humiliate, and that the entire complex operated like a machine fueled by fear and appearance. It was the kind of place where his daughter would never be respected for who she really was. He began to investigate quietly. He wrote down everything he saw, listened to conversations, and approached other employees with empathy. Many had similar stories about Karen and her abuse of power. Elijah, with his strategic mind, began to put together a plan. It wasn't revenge he wanted, but a public lesson that would serve not only Karen but everyone who pretended not to see the abuse happening before their eyes. Ana, seeing her father in that gardener's uniform, understood that something was changing. It was no longer just about learning to live without privileges. Now it was about justice, respect, and transformation. And more than ever, she knew that silence and dignity were the weapons that would soon make all the difference. Karen's mask. Karen Whitmore continued to walk around the condominium with her usual air of superiority. Her expensive clothes, impeccable makeup, and hair always in place served as armor to hide her true face. However, behind the fake smile, there was a woman consumed by control. Anything that threatened her position as queen of the condominium was treated as an enemy to be eliminated. And now, Ana was one of those targets. She began to make small, nasty comments about the new employee, insinuating that her behavior was inappropriate, that her presence was bothersome, and that she might be bringing a new type of person to the condominium. Without proof, but with well-placed words, she began to manipulate the opinions of some residents. The mood began to change. Some avoided Ana, others whispered behind her back. The strategy was clear: social isolation as a form of domination. Meanwhile, Ana did her best to remain calm. She knew she was being watched, but she had no idea to what extent her presence had affected the balance of power in the condominium. She continued to treat everyone with respect, even those who despised her. And this attitude, without her realizing it, began to gain silent allies among the employees and even some more fair-minded residents. Elijah, in turn, observed everything with redoubled attention. Every action of Karen's was recorded mentally. He didn't just want to expose her, he wanted to show how the entire system allowed her to act that way. Karen's mask was beginning to crack. And when that happened in front of everyone, there would be no makeup in the world capable of hiding her true face. The owner's party. The community was preparing for its traditional Founders Night, an annual event for the official residents of Willow Creek only. It was a chance to flaunt one's status, designer clothes, and power alliances. Karen was in charge of the organization, and as expected, had banned any employee or companion who was not conforming to local standards. The party symbolized everything she believed in: exclusivity, appearance, and social control. Ana helped prepare the event efficiently and discreetly, setting up tables and flowers under harsh instructions. She saw dresses that cost the price of a car and heard arrogant jokes about who should be sweeping and who should be walking the runway. Karen barely spoke to her, but made a point of keeping an eye on her from a distance. In the HOA president's view, Ana was nothing more than an unwanted extra on a stage reserved for the elite. That night, hidden behind the curtains of Mrs. Rosenberg's house, Ana watched the party unfold. The forced laughter, the empty toasts, and the self-sufficient speeches made her realize the emptiness behind the pomp. She watched it all in silence, while a part of her felt increasingly disconnected from that world that feigned civility, but was driven by vanity and exclusion. She no longer saw the point in staying there much longer. Meanwhile, Elijah was watching from another point in the condominium. In disguise, he also saw the party and recognized influential figures who had always flattered his fortune. Without knowing that his daughter was there, being treated as if she were invisible, he made a definitive decision. It was not enough to unmask Karen. He had to expose the entire culture of arrogance that the condominium represented, and he already had the plan in mind. The secret record. In the days following the party, Elijah quietly began to execute his plan. He installed discreet cameras in common areas where employees were allowed to stay and began recording abusive interactions, especially with Karen. He knew he needed concrete evidence that would reveal the pattern of systematic humiliation that she and other residents had been subjected to. His goal was not just to avenge his daughter, but to create a collective impact. Karen, on the other hand, was beginning to escalate her harassment of Anna. She claimed that Anna's clothes detracted from the surroundings. Mrs. Rosenberg ignored her advice, but the tension grew. Karen could not tolerate being frustrated even by another resident. Anna remained steadfast, but she felt the emotional weight building up. She could no longer sleep well and was beginning to question her decision to stay there. She did not know about her father's plan, nor that he had already collected recordings of prejudiced comments and mockery made by Karen in the presence of other employees. Elijah also recorded the complicit silence of residents who simply watched and did nothing. With the records in hand, Elijah began contacting former partners in the press and social justice NGOs. He knew exactly the kind of story that would capture the public's attention. A humble young woman being humiliated in a luxury condominium with video evidence, photos, and statements. All that was needed was the right moment for the turning point. The burnt notice one muggy morning, Anna found an envelope on the floor near the back door of her house. Inside was a handwritten note in crooked, threatening letters. "You don't belong here. Go back to the barnyard where you came from." Frightened, she showed the note to Mrs. Rosenberg, who shrugged off the incident, saying that people who are too sensitive don't last long in Willow Creek. Anna felt the loneliness like a punch in the gut. Karen watched everything from her living room window with disguised satisfaction. Although she had left no evidence, she knew that Anna would understand the message. Anonymous humiliation was yet another form of psychological control that kept the unwanted in their place. For her, this type of silent cleaning was part of preserving the condominium. It was a cold war against any threat to the order imposed by her image. Elijah, upon hearing about the note, did not hesitate to escalate his plan. He had the messages printed, compared the handwriting with other HOA notes, and noticed patterns that could link Karen to the threat. More than that, he decided to install an extra camera in the back of his daughter's house. He needed to anticipate any new attacks. He knew that the escalation of the abuse was inevitable given the character of the association president. Meanwhile, Anna pretended not to be shaken. She continued her work with the same zeal and respect, but inside, something in her was breaking. What was supposed to be a lesson in empathy and humility was becoming a cruel test of endurance. And the more they despised her, the more her true worth grew stronger. It was only a matter of time before the whole world saw what was behind that white picket fence. An unlikely ally. While doing maintenance work in the backyard, Anna came across Nathan, one of the condominium's hired gardeners. Unlike the other employees, he struck up a conversation and showed concern about what had happened in the last few days. He revealed that he had also been the target of veiled humiliations by Karen, and that many workers only pretended to accept it in order to keep their jobs. His empathy for Anna was immediate. Nathan began to help her whenever he could, alerting her to movements and gossip involving her name. He was discreet, but efficient. Anna, although suspicious at first, began to trust him as an ally in the midst of isolation. Over time, the two exchanged stories, and she discovered that he had dropped out of college to take care of his sick mother, accepting that job as a last resort. Elijah noticed the approach and, upon discreetly investigating Nathan, realized that the young man was honest and trustworthy. He decided to call him for a confidential conversation, where he revealed his identity and the entire plan that was underway. Nathan was surprised but agreed to participate in the operation, offering to help with the records and reporting previous abuses that he had witnessed. With another ally in the field, Elijah picked up speed. Now there was someone inside and outside Anna's house collaborating. The records were mounting, the evidence was mounting, and the cruel portrait of Karen as a symbol of oppression and arrogance was beginning to take solid shape. The truth was being pieced together, piece by piece, and the time for action was approaching. The first confrontation won. Late afternoon, Anna had to go to the HOA administrative headquarters to deliver documents for Mrs. Rosenberg. Upon arriving, she was ignored by the receptionist, who simply pointed to a chair without even looking up from her cell phone. A few minutes later, Karen appeared, visibly uncomfortable with her presence. Without hiding it, the president gave her a look of contempt and asked sarcastically what she was doing there. Anna calmly explained that she was carrying out a task for her boss. Karen interrupted sharply, saying that the presence of cleaning staff in the administrative area was inconvenient and suggested that she return through the back door next time. Tension grew in the room. Anna maintained her posture, handed over the papers, and left in silence. But something inside her changed. Indignation turned into strength. Outside, Nathan was waiting and had recorded part of the conversation with his hidden cell phone. The recording clearly showed the humiliation he had suffered, as well as the offensive tone of Karen's speech. Elijah received the video the same day and smiled silently. It was the proof he needed to begin the next phase, the exposure. Karen, arrogant as ever, believed she had won once again. But her blind ego did not realize that little by little, the very image she had built with so much zeal was being dismantled with facts, evidence, and witnesses. The storm was brewing, and the rain that was to come would spare no one. The final collection. Elijah spent the next few days consolidating all the evidence with the help of lawyers and an independent media team. There were videos, audios, notes, reports, and testimonies. Each piece reinforced the real narrative. Willow Creek was a scene of systematic humiliation, and Karen Whitmore was at the center of it. The story had all the elements to resonate, and he knew exactly when and where to spread it. Meanwhile, Anna was beginning to suspect that something bigger was going on, but she still didn't know the truth. She felt a subtle change in the way the employees looked at her, who began to show more respect and even admiration. Some came up to her silently to tell her that she was brave and that they were rooting for her. Nathan encouraged her not to give up, even without revealing all the behind-the-scenes details. Elijah decided to schedule the announcement for the next HOA general meeting, when all the residents would be gathered. He hired a video crew to broadcast a surprise presentation. It would be the perfect time to show who was who in this polished on the outside but rotten on the inside setting. It was time for a change. Karen, unaware of anything, was preparing for yet another meeting where she would dictate the rules, expecting to be applauded by her usual sycophants. She had no idea that, in a few hours, her reputation would be destroyed in front of everyone who feared her. And what would come next, no one in that condominium would ever forget. The day of the meeting. The big day of the HOA general meeting arrived. The event hall was packed with anxious and curious residents, waiting to hear the news that Karen was preparing to solidify her leadership. The air was charged with formality, but also with unspoken tension. Elijah, along with Anna and Nathan, prepared the final technical details for the broadcast of the tests. As Karen began her arrogant speech, holding the microphone as if she held power, the light in the room was interrupted by a video that began to be displayed on all the screens. Images and audios revealed humiliations, prejudices, and threats made by her and other residents against the condominium employees. Silence took over the room, and the expression on Karen's face changed drastically. No one could deny the veracity of the evidence. Residents who had previously pretended not to notice began to exchange uncomfortable glances. Arrogance was replaced by embarrassment. Elijah, in a firm voice, announced that the exposure was just the beginning of a necessary change for Willow Creek, a call for respect and dignity for all, regardless of social background. Anna watched with emotion, feeling that her fight finally had a greater meaning. Nathan was by her side, watching with satisfaction as justice was being served. Karen tried to articulate a response, but shame and fear took away her words. The cycle of exclusion and abuse in that condominium was beginning to be broken, and a new chapter was beginning. Karen's remains. After the meeting, the pressure on Karen quickly increased. Neighbors who had been complicit until then began to distance themselves from her. The HOA received several formal complaints about her behavior, and in light of the public exposure, the board decided to file a lawsuit to remove her from office. The president who had ruled the condominium with an iron fist saw her empire crumble in the face of indisputable facts. Karen began to face internal meetings and investigations that left her increasingly isolated. Arrogance gave way to flimsy justifications, but no one wanted to hear her excuses anymore. The humiliation she had inflicted on others was now being felt on her own skin. Behind the facade of control, the woman who mistreated vulnerable employees and residents became a shining example of what should not exist. Elijah followed everything closely, pleased with the outcome, but aware that the real victory would be the transformation of the environment as a whole. He encouraged Anna to participate more in community decisions, and Nathan received recognition for his silent and fundamental role. The Willow Creek community was undergoing a silent revolution, driven by courage and truth. Anna finally felt like she could breathe, not only because she had survived so many hardships, but because she had conquered a space where her worth would not be measured by social class or appearance. Respect was beginning to flourish, showing that even in places where prejudice seems impenetrable, justice and dignity can prevail. New beginnings. With Karen removed from the HOA presidency, a new leadership emerged. Someone willing to listen to and respect all residents and employees, fostering a culture of inclusion and empathy. Elijah helped make changes structural, involving employees in meetings and decisions, giving a voice to those who had previously been silenced. Anna was promoted to cleaning supervisor, with a salary and conditions that reflected her hard work and dedication. Nathan also had his contract improved and began leading a maintenance team. Being recognized as an example of honesty and hard work, the condominium began to transform from a symbol of exclusion to a model of respectful coexistence. More than that, the community around Willow Creek felt the impact of the change. Residents who had previously lived in their own worlds began to come together, participating in activities and supporting social projects. The spirit of collaboration and respect gained ground, and the shadow of arrogance was dispelled by a wind of hope. For Anna, this new chapter meant much more than a job or status. It was confirmation that the courage to face injustice can change destinies. She knew there would still be challenges, but now she had allies and the certainty that respect is not priceless, but valuable. The victory meeting. Months later, the HOA held another meeting to celebrate the achievements and discuss the future. Elijah, Anna, and Nathan were invited to speak about their experiences and the impact of the changes. With inspiring speeches, they reinforced the importance of inclusion, respect, and unity to transform realities. Karen was not there. She had moved to another city, leaving behind not only the condominium but also the legacy of arrogance she had built. Silence about her was the greatest possible response. Willow Creek breathed a new air, lighter and fairer, where differences were respected and people were valued. During the meeting, Anna received public recognition for her strength and determination. Her story became an example for other condominiums and communities facing similar challenges. Nathan, in turn, was honored as a community leader. Elijah, moved, saw his fight for dignity and justice transformed into a tangible reality. The environment changed radically. Fear and prejudice were replaced by empathy and collaboration. Willow Creek became not just a place to live, but a place to belong. And everyone knew that this victory was the result of the courage of those who refused to be invisible in the face of injustice. The future we build time passed, and Willow Creek established itself as an example of social transformation and respect. Anna, Nathan, and Elijah continued working to ensure that no form of humiliation or exclusion would ever again threaten the community. Social projects, empathy training, and inclusive events became part of the routine. Anna's story, which began with mud and humiliation, ended with pride and recognition. She not only changed her life but also inspired changes that reached many other people. The turnaround was complete, from exclusion to protagonism, from silence to active voice. If you've followed this story so far, you know that true transformation comes from courage and unity. If you enjoyed this inspiring story, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories that show how life can change when we face the seemingly impossible. Click the subscribe button and activate the bell so you don't miss any new chapters. Join this community that values justice, empathy, and respect, because together, we are stronger and can transform the world around us.